One of the biggest mistakes I made when I quit smoking weed was constantly comparing myself to other people who smoke weed. And if you're struggling with THC addiction or weed addiction and you're having a hard time trying to quit, you have to stop comparing yourself to other people who smoke weed. What do I mean by that? I might be sitting at home watching YouTube, browsing YouTube for some period of time and come across a Joe Rogan clip of Joe Rogan and Elon Musk smoking weed. And in a brief moment, I'll think to myself, Joe Rogan smokes weed. He's a successful guy. Elon Musk is very successful and he's smoking weed here on Joe Rogan's podcast. What about me? Maybe I should smoke weed again. Maybe I should be smoking weed. Or maybe I'll be talking to the successful attorney or the successful doctor who smokes weed and truly enjoys it, truly has a good experience with it. Maybe it's as simple as seeing a friend of mine smoking weed, having a good time. And I'll think to myself, I should smoke. I should start smoking weed again. That's a good idea. But then I quickly remind myself of something. Just because weed works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work the same for someone else. For example, you could have two people go to medical school. One person could come out of medical school and be an excellent doctor, and the other one could be an absolutely terrible doctor. They could come out having two very, very different experiences, even though they're doing the exact same thing, the exact same schooling. Just because something works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Just like some people struggle with alcohol and other people don't struggle with alcohol. Some people took painkillers for pain and then stopped using them the moment they were done. Other people developed crippling addictions to things like opioids and painkillers. We're all different. And your journey, how you consume weed, is very, very different from someone else's journey. And for me, when I was quitting, stopping comparing myself to other people who smoke weed was a must, because that addictive voice in the back of my brain, I used to Google what successful people smoke weed. And honest to God, I'd see people, even like, believe it or Wiz Khalifa, Snoop Dogg, write music that I would listen to, and I'd be like, well, they got millions of dollars and I don't. And they smoke a ton of weed. Titty Boy, 2 Chainz, all people that I don't want to say look up to, because I don't look up to them, but people that I would like admire and I'd view as financially successful. And I'd say, damn, like if they smoke, there must be something to it. It's no different from how we view alcohol, right? Going back a long, long time ago, you would view the successful businessman or successful businesswoman as drinking, a martini on the rocks or something like that, right? And you'd say like, oh, that's part of being successful. Alcohol, having a stiff drink, right? A whiskey or a vodka or a high-end wine, something like that. Just because it works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So if you're trying to quit smoking weed or you're in the process of quitting smoking weed, I want you to be on guard for this, because that addictive voice in your brain at one point or another, I promise you, is going to say, hey, Joe Rogan smokes. Hey, your best buddy Don smokes. Hey, your so-and-so smokes. Maybe you should smoke again too. Remember, you made the decision to quit for a reason. And that reason is because for whatever purpose, THC or cannabis was no longer a positive in your life, but it's turned to a negative. And I really want to emphasize something with this, because I think we've made this mistake before in the past. When they put the prohibition on weed and they made it illegal, they basically looked at weed, and if we look at, reefer madness, and said, okay, weed makes everyone, psychotic and gives them psychosis, and it makes people violent, and it makes women have sex with men that they shouldn't be, and blah, blah, blah. They said all this crazy stuff. It's the devil's lettuce. And they made a blanket statement that weed does this for everyone. And obviously there was a lot of politics behind the weed and why it was banned, and really crappy stuff, shady stuff to why that all went down the way it did, right? Very, very, very shady stuff. But this blanket statement was made. And now we're making a blanket statement. Hey, weed's good for everyone. Weed is great for anxiety, depression, insomnia, PTSD. And we're making blanket statements about things. You and I are two very different people. Even though I get you, I get addiction. I know that I get. On that regard, we're the same. But we gotta stop with the blanket statements, because blanket statements, we're all unique. Your experience with weed is unique and different from someone else's experience with weed. Whether we're talking about the negatives or the positives, we gotta stop with blanket statements because it's damaging, right? Telling people weed was all bad for them back in the day was damaging to the people that weed was actually good for them. And constantly shoving the message down people's throat that weed isn't addictive, that weed doesn't cause any problems, that there's only benefits from weed, and constantly telling people who get addicted that they're the problems with them, is so wrong. It's so wrong, and it's so misleading. And I hope to God more people find this channel and that they learn that, hey, the problem's not with you. The problem is you liked getting high. You liked the feeling that it created, just like someone likes getting drunk, just like someone likes getting chopped up on some other substance. I don't blame you for liking dopamine. I don't blame you for liking serotonin. The problem is the substance has addiction potential, and addiction occurred in your life. Addiction occurred for one reason or another. That's the problem. It wasn't you. It was a potential side effect of this substance. It's a side effect of a lot of substances, guys. So we got to change the narrative. We got to change how we talk about weed. We got to change our message. This video really took a side tangent, but that's okay. Follow me into the next video where I talk a little bit more about my toxic relationship with cannabis. I'll see you guys there.